Welcome back, Ultimate Weapons. It's the Night Sky Prince again. Who can say they haven't ever dreamed of making their own game? I think that as long as many of us have been playing games, the idea has occurred to us at some point or another. But the task of making your own JRPG, especially one that can stand next to AAA games, is quite difficult. Especially when you're just a team of 9 people. But imagine not only did you get that opportunity, you even managed to get the legendary composer, Yasunori Mitsuda, best known for his work in Chrono Trigger and Xenoblade Chronicles, to compose brand new music for your game. Put all these things together and you get a masterpiece in the making like Edge of Eternity. Now, first things first, Edge of Eternity is an early access game. In fact, many of you may remember it from a few years back when it was on Kickstarter. Early access games typically have a bad stigma around them, as you're literally buying a game that's a work in progress. One that you oftentimes can't even know for sure if it'll be seen to completion. Oftentimes, a lot of early access release games are so early that you don't even really have much of a functional game at all, and much less so an enjoyable experience. Thankfully, everything about Edge of Eternity thus far screams the exact opposite. While I did experience quite a few bugs with the game when I started off, it seems like many of these have already been fixed. In fact, some that I was going to talk about in this video have already had a patch release for them. Addressing these issues so fast helps build a great degree of faith with me, and allows me to believe that these developers will stay committed to the project till the end. Edge of Eternity is an indie JRPG with very clear inspirations ranging from Final Fantasy, Star Ocean, and Xenoblade. The first thing you'll notice about EOE is that it is absolutely beautiful. You sometimes lose yourself in just how beautiful the landscapes are, and the artists have meticulously detailed every single rock and blade of grass in the environment. The love and vitality to design that the artists had when creating this game shows in the characters and the world right down to the last pixel. With the aesthetic blend of sci-fi and high fantasy, this game is just absolutely gorgeous. Despite some issues with pop-in that can take you out of the experience, it's an issue that's likely to be significantly mitigated going forward. The game's combat is where things truly shine. If you're a big fan of the Active Time Battle System, or ATB, first made popular in the Final Fantasy series, then Edge of Eternity just might end up being a must-play for you. Its menu-driven combat is highly reminiscent of Final Fantasy's golden era, creating a sense of nostalgia for those of you who missed the glory days of Final Fantasy 6 and 7. However, there's a twist to this version of combat that is absolutely genius. Final Fantasy and other turn-based RPGs have experimented with the idea of a front and back row, oftentimes back row being more defensive, or having party members split up on different sides of a giant boss. Edge of Eternity, however, uses a hexagon-like positioning system, where you're able to move closer and further away from enemies and other objects on the field. Where this becomes absolutely strategic is that the map often has what are called Nexus Crystals on it. For example, being in the same position as a green crystal will help regen your party every few turns, allowing you to recover a little HP after taking damage. Discovering this is exactly what helped me win one of the early boss fights. Magic in Edge of Eternity is quite interesting. In Final Fantasy games, you usually select magic from a menu and then a character performs it. EOE differs in the fact that magic has to be charged on the ATB gauge before it casts, and if you're interrupted by a physical attack, then it cancels out your magic, meaning that you'll have to perform the command again in order to cast. Sometimes this can be frustrating, as it means magic can be quite difficult to pull off, but it's also pretty rewarding as magic is fairly high in offense. It's just oftentimes you'll find yourself randomly hoping that your mage doesn't get hit so that their attack will land. A great way to fix this going forward in future updates would be to implement a way to take defensive steps to protect them while they're charging spells, allowing it to be more of a strategic calculation than something left to chance. Edge of Eternity's attempt at AAA glory becomes more apparent when you find out that the game features voice acting for many of its important cutscenes. What's most important about this is the fact that the English voice acting actually sounds pretty good. In fact, I usually enjoy English audio, so that's not a big deal. Or to put it better, I don't have any particular preference for Japanese audio in general. I just enjoy what sounds good, and honestly, this sounds pretty good. They have some pretty decent voice actors. If the characters themselves will be impactful in the story, it remains to be seen. While the main protagonist has his moments where he shows a good deal of personality, his sister Celine thus far has been kinda drab. Though it's only on the surface, as this game is just too early to make an opinion on that. Positive things said, there are some improvements that need to be made to this game going forward. First of all, enemies are way too aggressive. Oftentimes I open the menu to pause the game and I realize that it doesn't actually pause enemies. They can't initiate a fight with you at this point, but as soon as you close the menu, they instantly collide with you and you're in combat. And a way to preemptive strike enemies similar to Dragon Quest XI or Final Fantasy XIII-2 would be much welcomed. Speaking of combat though, basic encounters do take a little bit too long. It seems like small enemies at the beginning of the game should take only a minute or two, but they take a little bit longer than that. This sometimes feel like combat is a bit of a drag. It also doesn't help that there isn't a dash button, or at least not that I found, which makes avoiding enemies that you don't want to fight a bit of a pain, especially when their running speed is so close to yours. So if the developers of this game end up watching this video, I just want to let them know that being able to sprint and do preemptive strikes would significantly improve the feeling of combat between exploration. So, should you give Edge of Eternity a try? If you're willing to put down $18 on a game with a ton of potential to be one of the best indie RPGs that we've seen, then this is the one to do it on. If you're looking to purchase a completed game that is bug-free and already polished to perfection, then this probably isn't going to be the game for you, at least not yet. With 3 more major updates set to roll out in 2019 that flesh the game out even further, the full game is slated to ship sometime in 2020. But for those of you who are interested in investing in what you believe will be hailed as one of the highest quality indie RPGs ever, and molding that through your personal feedback, then this is the opportunity to do just that. It's also worth noting that the game will feature mods going forward, allowing the community to get their own experience out of the game. So Ultima Weapons, I want to know, do you think Edge of Eternity is worth a shot? It probably has one of the highest user reviews of any early access game I've ever seen. Or do you just want to play it once it's further along in development? Subscribe, click the bell icon, and let your voice be heard in the comments below. And if you really love indie RPGs, I mean really love indie RPGs, be sure to join our Facebook group, Ultima, Square Enix plus JRPGs. It's like kickstarting an entire nation of JRPG nerds. Link in the description below.